On the morning of November 20th, 1923, a German housewife walked into a bakery in Berlin carrying a wheelbarrow. Not to carry bread home, to carry money. Inside that wheelbarrow were 200 billion marks, enough to buy a single loaf of bread. This was not some distant economic theory. This was not a gradual decline. This was the complete destruction of a currency, the obliteration of an entire society's savings in a matter of months. Just 2 years earlier, in January 1921, that same loaf of bread cost 1 mark. By November 1923, it cost 200,000 million marks. Workers were paid twice per day, because by lunchtime, their morning wages were already worthless. People burned money in their fireplaces because it was cheaper than buying firewood. Children built towers out of stacks of billion-mark notes, because the paper had more value as a toy than as currency. The German government had made a promise. They promised that printing money would solve their problems. They promised that the debt could be managed. They promised that the currency would hold its value. Every single one of those promises was a lie. And buried in this story is a pattern that should terrify you. Because everything that destroyed the Weimar Republic is happening again, right now, on a scale that makes 1923 look like a dress rehearsal. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story doesn't start in 1923. It starts in 1918. On November 11th, 1918, Germany signed the armistice ending World War I. The war was over, but the bill was coming due. Germany had financed the entire war through borrowing. By 1918, they had accumulated 156 billion marks in debt. The country was exhausted. The economy was shattered. And then the victors presented their terms. On May 5th, 1921, the London schedule of payments was announced. Germany would be required to pay 132 billion gold marks in reparations, in cash and in kind, coal, timber, industrial equipment. This was not a payment plan Germany could afford. This was an economic death sentence disguised as diplomacy. The Weimar government faced an impossible choice. They could raise taxes on a population already devastated by war and defeat. They could cut spending on the programs needed to keep society from collapsing into revolution. Or they could print money. They chose to print. The logic seemed sound at the time. The government needed marks to pay its debts and fund its operations. The central bank could create marks. Problem solved. But there was a flaw in this logic. A flaw so fundamental that every economist who studied monetary history understood it. A flaw the government chose to ignore. You cannot create real wealth by printing paper. At first, the inflation was manageable. In 1921, prices rose, but not catastrophically. The government told itself this was working. The economy was being stabilized. The crisis was being managed. They were wrong. By 1922, the acceleration began. The government needed more money to pay reparations, more money to pay civil servants, more money to subsidize food and fuel. And so they printed more. The Reichsbank contracted with 130 printing firms to produce currency around the clock. 30 paper mills worked continuously just to supply the paper for the banknotes. And still, it was not enough. The printing presses could not keep up with the government's demand for money. Foreign observers saw what was coming. John Maynard Keynes, the British economist, warned as early as 1919 that the reparations would lead to economic catastrophe. He resigned from the British delegation in protest. He published a book called The Economic Consequences of the Peace, predicting exactly what would happen. Nobody listened. The printing continued. By the summer of 1923, the situation was critical. In January 1923, the exchange rate was about 18,000 marks to the dollar. By July, it was 350,000 marks to the dollar. By August, it was 6 million marks to the dollar. And still, German leaders insisted everything was under control. Then came the final acceleration. September 1923, 98 million marks to the dollar. October 1923, 25 billion marks to the dollar. November 1923, 2 trillion marks to the dollar. The currency had become completely worthless. A lifetime of savings wiped out. Pension funds destroyed. Insurance policies meaningless. The German middle class, the backbone of society, was obliterated in a matter of months. The human cost was staggering. People who had worked their entire lives and saved prudently found themselves destitute. Retirees on fixed pensions starved because their monthly payment could not buy a loaf of bread. Families sold heirlooms and furniture just to buy food for the day. Crime exploded. Social order broke down. And in the chaos, extremists found their opening. The destruction of the currency destroyed faith in democracy itself. People who had lost everything were willing to listen to anyone who promised order, stability, revenge. Adolf Hitler launched his beer hall putsch in Munich in November 1923, attempting to seize power amid the chaos. He failed that time, but he had learned a crucial lesson. Economic devastation creates political opportunity. Within a decade, he would be chancellor. The hyperinflation did not directly cause the rise of Nazism, but it destroyed the middle class that could have resisted it. It created the desperation that made extremism appealing. It shattered faith in institutions that could have stopped it. The currency was eventually stabilized in November 1923 with the introduction of the Rentenmark. But the damage was done. An entire generation had been impoverished. Trust in government had been shattered. The seeds of catastrophe had been planted. Now, here's the part that should keep you awake at night. Everything that led to the Weimar crisis is happening again, right now. The same patterns, the same mistakes, the same denial, and the same promises that this time will be different. It will not be different. In 1918, Germany had debts of 156 billion marks it could not pay. Today, the United States has a national debt of 38.4 trillion dollars. That debt is increasing by $12 billion per day. Every hour, $255 million. Every minute, $25 million. Every second, $70,843. In 1923, Germany faced reparations it could never afford. Today, America has made promises for Social Security, Medicare, and other entitlements that it cannot possibly fund. The unfunded liabilities run into the tens of trillions. In 1923, Germany printed marks to pay its bills. Today, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet stands at $7 trillion. During the pandemic and financial crises, the Fed created trillions of dollars out of thin air through quantitative easing. Just like Weimar, we are told this is necessary. Just like Weimar, we are told it is temporary. Just like Weimar, we are told there will be no consequences. By 1923, Germany was borrowing just to pay the interest on previous borrowing. Today, the United States paid $2 trillion in interest on the national debt in fiscal year 2025. That is more than the entire defense budget. The government is now borrowing to pay interest on money it already borrowed. This is not sustainable. This has never been sustainable. History tells us exactly how this ends. But here is what makes today even more dangerous than 1923. The Weimar hyperinflation was contained to one country. Today's dollar is the reserve currency of the entire world. When the paper mark collapsed, it affected Germany. When the dollar collapses, it affects everyone. The scale is incomparably larger. The consequences incomparably more severe. The denial incomparably more dangerous. Germany's mistake was not just printing money. Their mistake was believing that promises can substitute for discipline. Their mistake was assuming that because a system had worked for a while, it would work forever. Their mistake was thinking that this time was different. America is making those exact same mistakes today. We are spending money we do not have on programs we cannot afford. We are financing it all with debt that we never intend to repay. We are printing dollars as if the printing press can create real wealth. And we are making promises to the next generation that we know we cannot keep. When a government breaks its link to reality, the bill always comes due. This was true in Weimar Germany in 1923. This was true in America in the 1970s when Nixon closed the gold window. This will be true in 2026. Let me tell you what the institutions that understand history are doing right now. Central banks around the world are buying gold at the fastest pace in over 50 years. China has been accumulating gold for years. Russia has built gold reserves to back its currency. Even traditionally dollar-friendly countries are diversifying their reserves. These are not conspiracy theories. These are publicly available facts that anyone can verify. The institutions that understand monetary history are quietly preparing for a world where the dollar is not as dominant as it is today. They remember what happened in Weimar. They see the same patterns emerging, and they are acting accordingly. In 1923, the people who saw what was coming and protected themselves survived. The people who believed the government's promises, who trusted that their marks would hold value, those people lost everything. You have the same choice right now. How much of your wealth is denominated in dollars? Your savings account, your retirement fund, your pension if you have one? How much of your financial security depends on the dollar maintaining its purchasing power? If inflation accelerated the way it did in Weimar, would you be okay? Would you lose your retirement? Would your life plans be destroyed? In 1923, nobody warned the German middle class what was coming. By the time they understood what was happening, their savings were already worthless. I am warning you now. The pattern is screaming at us from history. The debt is unsustainable. The printing cannot continue forever. The promises cannot all be kept. And the people telling you that everything is fine are the same people who told the Weimar citizens that everything was fine. I'm not telling you to panic. I'm telling you to prepare. Because history does not just rhyme. Sometimes it repeats word for word. The question is, are you listening?